The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and a wonderful caring mother who would do anything for her child, including kill her in a ritualistic murder-suicide pact.
Wait, what?
Huh? Oh, nothing. That's nothing. Following podcast contains spoilers and adult language. That's it. Roll the tape.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I am Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And you're worried. You're a little worried right now.
I am.
Okay.
I was wondering about the ritualistic murder-suicide pact. Yeah.
Hey, I'm not doing it. That's her. And this is
Okay.
podcast episode number 265. And this week we're going to be discussing Tales of the Walking Dead, season 1, episode 3. The title of this episode is D. And obviously that is Alpha's.
Does that mean that
E?
this next week's episode, is that going to be E?
I don't know, man.
And
So
then the
worried
one
about-
after that would be F.
I don't know.
And H.
But they're doing it D, like letter D, E, E. Like D, like a
Oh,
nickname, like a name.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Still
Sure,
really
sure,
concerned
sure,
about
sure.
this
Like,
spider.
don't go breaking my heart.
Sure, yeah, like that. Kiki D. I see what you're saying there.
Right.
So we're going to get into talking about that episode in just a moment. Before we do, I wanted to bring up a really special episode milestone. This episode is Steve's 150th episode with Into the Head.
No.
Yes, it is. And
Oh
so
my
I just want to
God.
say congratulations!
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's hard. You know, all I can say is, wow, it seems like a lot more. No, that's really cool.
I don't know how to respond to that. Other than be more afraid of the spider that's out the window and he keeps moving around.
Well, he's interested in what you're saying, so.
Hmm.
But I knew that there was something coming up. You know, I know we kind of talked about it a little bit, and that's fantastic. And I think it's more testament to the listeners that they've put up with us for this long. But yay, we did it.
Yeah, because I mean, we love doing this, but if there was, and I'm not sure, like maybe we would do it if no one was listening, but we certainly wouldn't do it this often. We keep up and
Right.
we make sure that we're covering interesting things and having our witty repartee because you guys are listening, you guys are downloading. So Steve's right. Yeah, it's a testament to having, some loyal listeners out there, which we absolutely
Some
love and
incredible
appreciate.
people.
Yeah, it's pretty
That's
awesome.
very cool.
All
Now,
right,
see,
so
now I'm feeling all tingly.
well, I don't know if you know this, but in the harassment training I took today, you shouldn't be telling people about that, is what we're saying.
Oh,
You can feel
Okay,
tingly,
should I-
that's fine. Just keep it to yourself.
don't tell. All right, should I tell you that I'm not wearing pants?
Yeah, you should always tell me when you're not wearing pants. Because you never know when I'm going to say, hey, surprise, I'm outside. Knock, 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 and knock
Oh.
on the door. And that'd be surprising.
And like my standard answer is that it was very hot out and I was hungry, no matter what you see. So anyway,
Anyway, so let's get into talking about this episode. And Steve, I think I went first last week. So why don't you let the listeners know what were your sort of quick thoughts, your knee-jerk reaction on this episode, episode
Yeah.
3, titled D.
thank you. I will go first, and I think this is the alpha backstory episode that I didn't know or really want. I mean, in terms of an episode, it's kind of like my reaction to the first episode, which is kind of And we talked about this a little bit before we started when we were just kind of shooting the what. And in an anthology show, when you only have one chance, you only have your one episode, your one script to tell your story. In this case, I think it was 53 minutes. You have 53 minutes to tell your story. That's it. There's no part 2. There's no next week. There's nothing. This is the whole entire universe is this episode. You have to make sure you have compelling story. You have to make sure you have characters we care about. You have to make sure that there's, drama and action and all that stuff in there. And, let's be honest, the two main characters in this had complete and total 1,000,000% plot armor. Yeah. And that they ain't going nowhere, right? And then the phrase I used was, I don't care how many cliffs you hang them from, they're going to survive, right? Alpha's not going to die here. Right. Lydia's not going to die here. And when half of your episode, which is the second half, is just the two of them roaming around the trailer park or whatever, not a lot of jeopardy there, right? It doesn't. There could have been 1,000 walkers there, and it'd be like, and, So, and I think that was the biggest issue that I had with this was, I think the story that was interesting to me was the boat. And what was going on with the boat and the hierarchy, and it was our power struggle. And of course, you have, the douche nozzle Billy and his guys and all that. So that was the story. And they wrapped that up in 20 minutes. And then suddenly it was the Alpha and Lydia show. And again, you're like, okay. And I know that you're going to bring this up more, so I'll let you. But clearly there's some chronological issues as to when is this story happening and all of that. And that didn't sit well with me either. And I think the biggest thing is, we already got a flashback episode on Alpha. And so I don't know necessarily if we needed another one. Not that they couldn't have done one on this show, but maybe not in the first season when they're trying to get this going. Maybe the idea is let's just show as many different new things as we can rather than, we're gonna pull a character out of the main show. Like, did you I almost got a sense that like this was like a script that was written when when Angela Kang decided to do the 6 bonus COVID episodes.
That's a possibility.
And, you know what I mean? Because we got the Negan flashback episode, and it just kind of seems to me, at that point, maybe that was like when the call went out of like, hey, we got a couple extra episodes where we can't really advance the main plot because we can't use everybody because of the restrictions. So we're going to like pick individual characters and kind of just either focus on them or maybe do flashback or whatever. And this script was one that was, put in the maybe pile. And then it never got chosen, and then the next thing you know, they're doing this show, and they're like, "Hey, we got a script." I don't know. It kind of struck me like that. But so overall, I was kind of it didn't really do much for me, really. I mean, well made, well acted, but kind of. What did you think?
We talked like you said, we talked a little bit before we started recording, and I feel like it's a shame because you get great actors, and you have a handful of compelling situations. Like, yes, I understand. Like, we do know that Alpha and Lydia make it, at least to the Walking Dead timeline, not the current one, but they'll make it out of this situation. But I think that there's some value in learning more information about how Alpha became Alpha, but I think we got a couple of large pieces of that already. So I think you have to make sure that what's happening in this episode is worth telling a third backstory, because they reference the husband, and we got the episode where we see her kill the husband. And we saw, and what was great about that story was they actually told it from the two different perspectives. You got what does Lydia remember? What does Alpha remember? And you get the story of her meeting Beta. And I think those two scenes, up until we got this episode, those felt like, we got a really good glimpse into what were some formative events for Alpha to become Alpha, to transition from D and become Alpha. Now, obviously, there must have been something that happened in between leaving that sort of basement shelter where they were holed up and where her husband, she ended up killing him there. There had to be something that happened between there and her meeting Beta, because there is some time jump. You can tell because of the age of Lydia. And I think that there are elements of this story that are interesting. You know, it shows both Alpha being able to sort of let go of Lydia in certain ways, but also still hold her really close at the same time, which was very interesting to see that sort of dichotomy in her head. And it just shows how, like, once they become like a collective, she's able to sort of couch things in, I do everything for my daughter, but she's also like beating the shit out of her daughter and like doing terrible things to her. And also alternatively ignoring her and letting her learn how to live on her own. So, you know, seeing sort of that growth to that was definitely worthwhile. I just think, like, and I'm opposite of you, I didn't like the boat story. I thought that I just wasn't, I'm not sure I would take Alpha when she's D. I wouldn't take D as someone who would kill her husband in order to make her daughter safe, and then go to a group where she would take a subservient role like that. And I understand that it was like a collective and it's like many hands make light work kind of thing, but it's all the hierarchy of that boat crew. She was on the lower rung for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and there's elements of, like, you know, she has no desire to get dressed in that pretty dress and come to the thing. It's just not what she wants to do. Right. So, you know, maybe she's perfectly fine with doing that. The more dirty roles, the more subservient, you know, the cleaner, the blue collar. She was more blue collar and everybody else was kind of, you know, there's nothing very blue collar about teaching yoga classes, is what I'm saying. So, so there were elements that felt like they didn't fit her personality too. So that was a problem for me, just sort of story structurally. I didn't, I guess if you put it against the other stories of this anthology series, it's not terrible. The boat thing, it's not what I would have picked. It seems kind of odd as a choice. Plus, I mean, we're on like a very typical Southern in a swamp riverboat, and she's the only one with a Southern accent, like so much so that she stands out. And I'm like, is that really the right thing? Anyway, so
maybe they were all tourists in New Orleans
and got
or
stuck
something
on that riverboat.
Maybe, right?
Well, I mean that's possible. I just always think that lends an air of inauthenticity. And if it's something that you want to be authentic, then, you know, you got to add a little bit more to it. But anyway, the hardest part was that you touched on it. It was the timeline issues. I just don't think. I think I read in an article, and again, don't quote me, I forget, but it's either one or the other. Either this stuff, because we're talking about the stuff at the end of the episode when they show her meeting the Whisperers as they were at that time, and they had a different leader, and that leader was a woman, and her name was Hera, like the goddess, and she. So I read somewhere that this meeting happened and then she met Beta and they rejoined the Whisperers, or was that she met Beta just before then and then maybe went back to get him and had him join or something? Who knows? But either way, it makes it kind of messy, regardless. And I'm not saying you can't explain it, but it's like, it's messy. It's messy. And I was saying to Steve before I started, you've already set up the idea of Alpha was self-narrating in this episode. We got little vignettes of her. She's sort of telling this story. She's the narrator. So there's no reason why she couldn't just jump over and say, And then, I brought a friend that I had met with me and we met this group, and we really liked them, and we stayed, and then I became the leader of this group. You know what I mean? Because I thought I thought showing, the whole hair and she becomes the leader by overtaking Hera is that's compelling, but to introduce it in this episode, it's a shame because it messes with the timeline stuff. So overall, I would say that's how I felt about the whole episode. There were elements that I liked, but it wasn't as solid or well structured enough to make it like a real good slam dunk. And I had too many questions. And by introducing that stuff at the end, you then mess with timelines that are already established. And that's not what I'm looking for in this kind of a series. I want to sort of build upon things we already have or create new things we've never seen before, but it's all going to make sense,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like you find a really awesome, prepper place, and that prepping is important, and you leave and you're a little bit injured and you're with someone. Don't you know that filling your bag full of supplies is important before you leave? Like, those are the things that, like that whole episode had a couple of issues, but like at the end, you're like, okay, you can't do that because he wouldn't do that. He'd fill a bag.
Right.
The same thing. It's like you mess with timeline, it messes up the whole idea. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
It's like if you do an episode of a show where two people are in this like shopping mall that is extremely well preserved and has lots of supplies and equipment, and then they leave, and the very last shot is another person in the group they're with going, well, someday we'll find our home. and you're like, what are you talking about? What about
already
that
found
way?
it?
Yeah. So
yeah.
Maybe it's similar. I think you're trying to say.
Yeah. And when it's like smart people, like we know Alpha is smart. We know that she's cunning. She's a planner. She thinks very far ahead. So for someone who has those skills, it doesn't make sense to see like sloppy storytelling around it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it just doesn't make sense to me. But there were some things I did like. So I know when we get into the details, we'll talk about both of those. And I know you had some stuff you liked too. So so now that we've sort of talked about in our what we label quick thoughts and our they're never quick.
Well, those were not quick thoughts right there. I gotta say, that was long quick thoughts.
Yeah, those were long quick thoughts on both of ours. Normally it's just me who runs at the mouth, but Steve,
more so on her.
Anyway,
so this is my 150th episode. Did you know that?
I did. You know why I know? Because I put it out there. Whatever, we celebrated. Move on. Okay, so let's get into talking about our individual moments. And before that, let's get into a quick episode description. Steve, you're up.
All right, so this week's episode of Tales of the Walking Dead is being brought to you by Sunny Creek RV Park. Are housing costs soaring out of control? Can't find an affordable home? Is the zombie apocalypse killing your dream of owning your own house? Then why not try Sunny Creek RV Park? Why, we've got it all. We have cable TV and Wi-Fi, and ample space to park all of your cars and trucks. Hell, even if they don't run. And with our propane tank exchange program, each tenant can have up to 2 tanks full and ready to go. And our movable awnings and lawn furniture will provide hours of outdoor fun. And did we mention the people? Sunny Creek folk have an insatiable hunger to make friends. Once they know you're there, they'll walk on over, eager to have you for dinner. So get behind us and just walk on into the Sunny Creek RV Park today. We're located 1 mile ahead of the sign. And if you're wondering, there ain't no creek.
Well,
so there you go.
That's just hilarious. And thank you for making me not be alone in the using a Southern accent. More people should do it. It's fun. It's fun, people. Play with it. Have a Southern accent. Pretend you're Alpha. Or pretend you're trying to sell an RV park to people. Who knows?
RV park, yay. Yeah, look, did you not hear about the propane tank exchange program?
I did hear about it. I did hear about it. That's real fancy.
That's right. And if you're wondering, there ain't no crake. Anyway, our episode in question is, like you said, is episode of Tales of the Walking Dead 1.3, and the title is D-E-E. And our description is: a mother evolves after she and her daughter escape violence and take refuge on a vintage steamboat. The peaceful ambiance deteriorates when a coup attempt forces the mother to revisit her violent past in order to protect her child. And that is your episode description.
There you go. All right. So before we get into our individual moments, let's chat a little bit about writer-director of this episode. Some surprising names there.
Well, and we mentioned this last week. The director is again, it's Michael Satrazemis. He's one of the big guns, The Walking Dead. We talked about it. 17 episodes of the main show he's directed, 20 episodes of Fear, and he directed 3 episodes of this show, Tales. He did last week, he did this week, and he is also doing episode 1.5, which the title of that is Davon, D-A-V-O-N. And so that's coming up. Next week, I believe, is the Anthony Edwards episode. And then we'll have this one. So anyway, that's our director. Our writer this time around is another Walking Dead veteran. It's this gal named Channing Powell. And she is also if not an executive producer, definitely a producer on this show, which last week's writer was also a producer, executive producer. So I think we're seeing a lot of the people that are making this show happen are getting a chance to write for it. But she, again, is long-term, prolific writer for Walking Dead universe. She wrote 18 episodes of the main show. If you remember, in one of the later seasons, there was an episode called "Look at the Flowers."
Yep.
And she wrote that one, just to give you an example, and a bunch. I mean, again, you can go look them up. I mean, it's just 18 of them, right? Some of them she wrote with other people, but a lot of them she wrote by herself. So a lot of experience there. She also wrote 2 episodes of Fear. So, yay, only 2. She wrote, and they're both in season 6. She wrote 6.11, and actually the 2 she wrote are 2 of the ones that we actually kind of liked out of the stinky last couple seasons. She wrote 6.11, which was called The Holding, and that's the episode where Alicia and some of the group go into the underground camp that Teddy's crazy tree people have.
Oh yeah.
If you're, and they, and we learn all about the circle of life and the compost and all that stuff. And then at the end they set the fire and Alicia doesn't get out and Teddy ends up capturing her. That's that one. Okay. And I think we both kind of like that one.
Yeah. There was a lot of really cool world building in that. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, again, as far as Fear episodes go, that one was pretty good under the 2 knuckleheads. And then she also wrote, a couple episodes later, she wrote 6.14, and the title of that one was Mother, and she wrote that with Alex Delisle, and that's the Teddy in prison flashback episode where we see him at the beginning, right, and the guy goes down to get electrocuted, he comes back to life, and then all heck breaks loose. And then in the present day, it's Teddy and it's Dakota and Alicia, and they're, I don't know, doing something. And at the very end, it's when he takes her to the hotel and he locks her in the bunker and says, "You're going to make my new world for me." That's that whole one. So, and again, as far as Fear episodes go, that was one of the better ones.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And then on the Tales of the Walking Dead, she has 2 writer credits. She wrote this episode, D, and then she's also the writer of, again, episode 1.5, which is entitled Davon, which, as I just said, Michael Satrazemis also directed. So they worked together 2 times on the Tales of the Walking Dead. So.
Okay. 2 times.
two times. So yeah.
Hmm.
So that's your writer and your director.
All right. Okay.
Let's get right into it. Come on.
Yeah. I totally I contradicted myself because I put a note in my notes that says that I liked the premise of Alpha getting her start as someone who's on the lowest rung because she would do anything to keep Lydia safe. And I will couch that. I think it's interesting that she would accept something that's low rung to start out, but I don't think that she'd been there for a year, they said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'd see her being subservient like that for a year. That just seems odd to me. I don't know. Did it bother you that she was in such a subservient role, or no?
It really didn't. And the only reason I say that is, you kind of got the sense that the way Brooke ran the boat, was that you got assigned jobs based on what you could do. And, I got the sense that, Dee did not have a lot of technical training. She didn't have a lot of education. And so being like the maid, janitor, waitress, bus girl, that's kind of about what she could hack.
Right.
And so she, like you said, she took it because, she really didn't like people, and, that she tells Lydia, people always let you down and you got to learn to survive on your own and all that. But she also knew the value and protection of people. And again, if she got there a year earlier, Lydia's even younger and, more of a child than she is now when the story starts. And so she needs that protection. And so I think she kind of went like, she kind of bit the bullet and said, fine, I'll go be the gal that cleans up and does all that because it's the only way I can earn my way onto this boat. So it didn't bug me as much. Particularly when they start, like the very first thing that happens when the episode starts is we hear Samantha Morton in narration, and she says basically flat out that she killed her dad when she was a little kid, right? And so right away, okay, this is a woman that is prone to violence and it does not have a problem in killing you. And so I kind of got the sense of we're seeing her at the beginning of this episode, and she's really struggling with her violent nature and trying to keep it under wraps. And so maybe that's why she took the subservient role. So she, could just kind of focus on, I'm going to mop the floors. I'm going to set the tables. I'm going to do all this stuff and provide for my daughter. And all these thoughts of kill them all, I'm just going to drown them out in my head, So I didn't have as much problem with it as you did. And again, I liked the riverboat world. I wanted to learn a little bit more about, how did this happen? Why are there all northern people here? What happened to all the accent speaker? All that stuff. I wanted to know that, and we kind of got a little bit of it because remember they show us the scene right at the beginning where Brooke's in bed with the other dude, and you're like, okay, so they're kind of having a thing. Is that secret? Does anyone know about it? I mean, the way he acted when the guns were drawn on him, he didn't really, it didn't really seem like, he's sleeping with the boss. You know what I mean? It was, so I don't know. I would have liked to learn more about that. So I didn't have as much of a problem with it.
Okay. Clearly I did.
Yeah, I know.
In the riverboat thing, I was like, I liked elements of it, but I felt like it didn't even really need to be that. It could have been anything. It was clearly the structure of the episode was we need to create a situation that shows how Alpha, like, she's already killed her husband, so she's willing to kill anyone to like help her daughter, save her daughter. She stays with a group for a year doing like some kind of subservient role, so it shows that she would sort of do anything to make sure his daughter stays in a safe place, a community, and blah blah blah. But it could have been anything. It didn't have to be. Could have been people living in a cave. There could have been, people living in a mall. I mean, I'm just saying it was sort of and you know how we feel about like the fear writers, where it's like they look at something and they just go, hey, you know what, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
So it's good because like in an anthology series, we're probably never going to see or hear these riverboat people ever again. So if ever there's an instance where you're going to like, apropos of nothing, we're just going to have a riverboat with a group of people that end up living on it. This is the place you're going to do it. I'd rather this happen in this show than in one of the other shows. So I didn't find it quite as interesting, but I'd rather it be there for people like you that did find it interesting in a show like this, so that it's like, like I said, we don't have to go back to the riverboat because it's immaterial. It was just like it was just a small detail of the story kind of thing. So
yeah, it definitely smacked of the wouldn't it be cool list.
Yeah.
Maybe this gal, the writer Channing Powell, placed a phone call to the knuckleheads at Knucklehead Industries and said, hey, do you guys have Riverboat on your list? And they went, no. And she went, thanks. And then decided to write a Riverboat story. But what I like about it is, the boat being on the water, that's the safest you can get in this universe.
Right.
Because we've determined the ghouls they're not Italian ghouls, they don't swim. And so that I always wondered why they didn't do more of that, when they're in Alexandria, why don't you go to Chesapeake Bay and, get a boat in there, get a tanker or something or a big freighter and just, anchor it offshore, and then you have a base that is essentially invulnerable. Now you have to go out and get supplies, you have to go back to the land to do that, but at least you have a place that they will never break down the walls, they'll never find a way in because it's out on the water. And so I like that aspect of seeing people that at least were smart enough to go, well, let's get out on the water, and that will give us that protection. And again, what ultimately did in the boat, it wasn't the ghouls, right? It was people. Billy and his guys, right? So yeah, I mean, so I like I said, I thought that was an interesting idea. Like, would I like to see like a whole 8 episodes of a season devoted to it? No, not really. Like you said, I think it was a nice exercise for an anthology, a one-time thing. It's just they got us on the boat, they kind of showed us how it worked, what the structure was, and then they killed everybody on the boat and we were off the boat. And like Indiana Jones' dad said, what happened to the boat? We're not taking the boat. So
right.
So and then the rest of the episode was Alpha and Lydia walking around, which is fine, but like you said, we've already gotten 2 flashback episodes of Alpha and Lydia, and we already know that they're invulnerable in this story. They're not going to die. They're not going to get injured. Nothing's going to happen to them. So how, no matter what you come up with, there's going to be in the back of the audience's mind a sense of, okay, there's no drama. There's no tension because they're going to make it. So anyway.
That is true. I would also say too, like, and we could talk a little more about timeline stuff at the end, because it's really the end stuff that sort of knocks it out of the timeline in a weird way.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about the riverboat, I gotta say, man, oof. I'm sure that they did this on purpose, but man, did I hate the Brooke character.
Really?
Well, I gotta say, nobody wants to do workouts in the apocalypse. I don't want apocalypse yoga.
Okay, first of all, that was like Pilates. That wasn't yoga. But yeah, I mean, that was way too moving around aerobic stuff, Taibo type crap than to be yoga. But I like the character of Brooke because when have we ever seen a soccer mom in charge on this show?
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I just think.
And again,
no, go ahead.
Like, didn't you like want to know like how in the world did she get to be in charge?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think she's without, pardon the phrase, but I think she's type A, like alpha-ish enough. Like, she's not just a soccer mom. She's head of the parent-teacher committee. She's head of the parent-teacher group and meeting. You know what I mean? So it's so yeah, I'm not.
I pegged her like she had a job. She was like, a CEO of some company or a vice president, or you know what I mean. She had a power job. She wore power suits to work,
Yeah.
and had whole, departments that she controlled. I mean, I totally got the sense that, okay, this is a woman, because again, she ain't married, she doesn't have kids, at least that we see, and so that tells me career woman. She didn't want to do the domestic thing. She wanted to go out and, do something for a living. And so she did. And so again, I just wanted to have a little bit more of how did she come to run this place? And, again, we only have 50 minutes. I get it. But I thought that there was definitely some interesting things about the boat that I wanted to know more about.
Okay. I can see that. Absolutely.
And you're right. She had just enough of the, bitchiness to her, the way she talked to Alpha about Lydia, how, Lydia wants the birthday party and, we really should work on this. And, and when Lydia shows up, or when Dee shows up in that dress and she's just like, oh, and you look okay, would you be more comfortable wearing a suit? And and all that stuff. So they gave her just enough of that venom where you're like, she seems nice, but she also seems to be very judgy, and like she to your face, she's very pleasant, but as soon as you're not there, oh my God, she just, wow, can't believe that, can't believe that Dee wore that crazy dress. Did she look in the mirror? All that stuff. Like everything that Billy said to her at the bar to her face, that's what Brooke would say behind her back.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I feel like we were set up to like maybe not like Brooke, but we definitely were set up to not like Billy either. Like he did a good job. I mean, terrible.
Yeah. What a great character, right? And I think the other thing that was cool about it was, from that first scene in the bar, you can tell that like Alpha's like spidey senses are tingling. She doesn't like him right away. And the thing that I thought was great was that she was right. It was kind of like a little, in my crazy head, I like went back to like the original Night of the Living Dead with the character of Mr. Cooper, where he's a total douchebag, and he and Ben fight the moment they see each other, and they're never going to work together, and they're always going to be at each other's throats. But you know what? If you look at that story, he was right. If they all would have gone in the cellar, they would have lived. You know what I mean? So, and I just kind of like that part of like, Dee is immediately distrustful. She tells people she doesn't trust him. She catches him, with the mirror and everything, and they still don't believe her. And again, it's like, no, she is correct. If you would have listened to her, you might not have all gotten shot.
Right. That's true. If they'd jumped in. And it's interesting because like it's almost like that's the stuff that Billy was saying that he kind of liked about the group, was that they needed someone to take charge, because they weren't going to do it. Because obviously any other group would have listened to Dee and been like, she's got a point. We need to be careful. We don't know, and da-da-da. And they didn't. They just weren't. Yeah. Nobody jumped up to be like, we should take what Dee's saying as, this is possible. We got to investigate it or whatever. And they just didn't do it. And didn't he make some comment about something like that where it's like, man, you guys just didn't even, she was right. And, you guys didn't even investigate it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he says something like, if you guys listened to Dee, I'd be dead now, or something like that.
Yeah.
And he also says that like he had to move up their plans to take over the boat because Dee caught him. Like they weren't going to immediately move on it as quickly as they did. But then once she found him, she kind of forced his hand. I don't know. It just seemed weird to me that like his reaction is he's afraid of her so much that he dives off the boat, and nobody thinks that's weird. You know what I mean? It's just like, and not only does he dive off the boat, but he doesn't like swim around and get on the other. You know what I mean? He doesn't come up for air right next to the boat, and he's like, she was gonna kill me. You know what I mean? If you're truly innocent like that, why are you just gonna leave? So yeah. That to me raised huge red flags, and all of them are looking at Dee like, I cannot. But what did Brooke say? You do this again, and you're off the boat, and all this. And I'm just like, really? I mean, that guy just jumped in. Yeah. What does that tell you? So, but yeah. I really like the character of Billy, and again, I'd like to see a little more of him, but we never. I suppose he's still out there because we didn't see him die, and the boat is gone when they finally get out from the Tauntaun Walker at the end. So maybe he took the boat with his guys that survived, and they're still out there. We don't know.
Would you be interested enough to? I think that's the key on whether or not they wrote a compelling story for this anthology. If they continued the story and you got to see more, would you be interested enough to watch it? I think that's a good marker.
Of just him? You mean?
Yeah, maybe. The continuing adventures of asshole Billy and his riverboat of douchebags.
Yeah, the riverboat douchebags of doom. Let me put it this way. As great as Sunny Creek Trailer Park was, because I love me a trailer park, I would have been much happier if the 53 minutes of this episode was all on the riverboat. Okay. And at the like if the way like in the middle part when all the shooting starts and Lydia and Alpha, get out on the dinghy and make it away. If that would have happened at the end, and then at the end of the episode they just go walking, if they would have ended where Alpha says, I know you don't like me much right now, but I'm all you got, and I'm never gonna let you down again. We have to keep going. It's not safe here, and they walk off screen into the sunset. I would have been okay with that because it doesn't muck up the timeline, and it ends in a way where it's like, okay, so now like you could see where the next place that they get to or down the line they get to is the nut house where Beta is. And it would have worked. And instead, we got the whole trailer park scene, and then we got the Whisperer scene, and that was cool and all that. But at the same time, you get done and you're like, wait a minute, when did this happen? And when did that happen? And how could they not happen the way that they're happening? Right. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the sign that I didn't find the riverboat like portion of the story compelling, is because I didn't even notice that they weren't there. Like when they showed the whole, all the people who'd come up on the shore, like when they came out of the Tauntaun, I didn't notice the riverboat was gone. I didn't notice any of that. I was paying attention to something else. It just didn't hit me because I don't know if I didn't care. I just want to make sure it's clear. Like, you care about this riverboat story quite a lot. Were you Huck Finn in another life, and we just don't know this?
Nope. But I did watch the adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn on the Banana Splits every week. So there is that, which of course is the landmark show where it's all a cartoon except for the three kids are live action. So you had Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer, and Becky Thatcher, and they would go on crazy adventures where everybody they interacted with and the world around them was a cartoon like Roger Rabbit, but they were real. And so, yes, there's that. It's funny because I was just going to ask you, would you have liked this episode better if they had just been like in a building and not the riverboat? I mean, was it just the riverboat itself where you were just like, I don't really get you. This doesn't.
No, I think no. I think that it was if you use it as like it's one of the safest things we can do, which is true, being on the water, like you were saying, it is a safe place. I don't know. I think, again, we've struggled with this. You're not going to get a lot of information. So we didn't get a lot of information about the riverboat people. It just was such a weird, like, if they were in a building, would they have had like dress up in the restaurant night? Like, that just felt, that had a little bit of a Shining aspect to it, which I was like, have we gone back in time here? Is this happening? Is Alpha like, because when we saw clips of this, I wasn't sure if this wasn't a manifestation that was in Alpha's head. Like having dress up and go into the restaurant portion of the riverboat is so like, and I get what they said about Brooke saying like, we need to embrace some of the normal things from back in the day and da-da-da-da. And I get wanting to do that. But like going full on with like these people were like fully dressed up. Like they were in like formal
tuxedos and absolutely. I again, this is just clearly this is a disconnect between you and I, because I was okay with this and you obviously were not, for very valid reasons. But what I liked about it was, and I think Brooke even says this to D at one point, where she says something like, you're so worried about what could happen, like bad, what could go wrong, that you're not living, and so all of the stuff that they did on that boat that we saw, whether it was the yoga / Pilates / Taibo classes in the morning, or the posh dress uppy dinner, those were all like activities that were programmed by Brooke to like help make people have moments where they're not like, oh my God, we're in the apocalypse and everybody's gonna die and we're gonna get eaten by these dead people, and you know what I mean? It's just little moments where it's like, hey, you know what? It's a crap show out there, but we're gonna have a fancy dinner here because we can, and we should enjoy it. And so I was okay with it, and of course it also helped story-wise because, Lydia completely wants Brooke to be her mom, I mean,
of course,
Brooke's like a mom, you know what I mean? She doesn't kill people, she ain't crazy, and she doesn't have a southern accent, so why wouldn't you want her to be your mom, so, but that sets up the confrontation between Brooke and Alpha, and that, who's going to get control of ultimately of Lydia, and of course that's what kind of forces Alpha's hand there to kind of go back to the violence. But anyway, like I said, was it strange? Yeah, it was that they had like the whole everybody's dressed to the nines thing, but at the same time it's like, okay, it makes sense to me that you would do that. Now, did they do that every night? No, I got the sense that this was like a once a month kind of a thing that they do. Because they want to give everybody a chance, for the people that love to go out to dinner and dress up, this is your chance to do that. You know what I mean? And there probably are a million other things they did on the boat. Like, I'm sure one night a week or one night a month, they, pull up the movie screen and they play a DVD, and it's like you get to go to the movies and they make popcorn. So like people like you and I would be like, yeah, that's what I'm doing, because that's what we like to do in the old world. And it's just sort of a way to kind of make sure everybody has a chance to just kind of relax and enjoy what little comforts they have, because like Brooke said, if all you do is worry about what could go wrong, you're not living. And so it made more sense to me.
I get that. And I think that that's true. I think that that's, making sure that there's still levels of normalcy there. Is important, of course. I think too that one of the things that they did a good job of in this episode was to show that you got to kind of find a balance, though. Like Alpha is worried all the time, and you do have to have some normalcy, but also Brooke and her group were a little soft and not paying attention, and that bit them in the ass. So I think I think this episode, if they did achieve something, it was to show that like being just one and just the other, or being strong in one and strong in the other, that it has to balance better more to the middle, that it won't, that you've got to be able to have a little bit of both and not be, so heavy in one area over the other, because it'll have dire consequences either way. You're either going to be super worried all the time and stressed out like Alpha, and see and occasionally maybe see things that aren't there, but then she sees things that are there, and you're just not paying attention because you're trying so hard to have these other nice things. I don't know, but
you're trying so hard to be normal, to sort of be like that used to be, that it almost got a sense with Billy. It was almost a little like a nod to Dante.
Oh yeah, like I see what you mean. The interloper.
And you wonder, maybe you think that might be where Alpha got the idea.
Oh yeah. Get a person and just have them fit in, and it'll work.
Yeah, and
it's interesting.
And he was there a couple weeks, right? It wasn't like he showed up the day before, so he'd kind of worked his way into that group. Remember, he knew the schedule and he knew how things worked and all that stuff. He knew the people's names and so on. So he was, and again at the bar, he's definitely saying some awful things to Alpha. But he was very pleasant, and he was getting people their drinks, and he was kind of playing the part. And of course, it was all just to kind of infiltrate, learn, be ready to let the rest of the guys on when the moment comes.
That's a
possibility.
I wonder too. I was just gonna say before we move on, like I wonder too if the whole like dress up and stuff seemed a little ridiculous to me, because that's not something I like to do. So to me, I'm like, it seems superfluous because it would be to me. So, maybe there's someone who's one of our listeners who likes to get dressed up and go like once a month and go to a fancy dinner with their husband or their wife or whatever. And maybe they look at that and go, oh yeah, like that would be something that and maybe it's hitting me differently, because that's never something that I'm interested in doing. I'm like, I don't want to get dressed up in something fancy and like all of that. So that's where that sort of like that personal experience stuff, kind of like how you are very, very attached to riverboats, which is a nice brand new thing that I get to make fun of you about for the rest of your life.
Apparently, yes, it's a thing. It's not that I'm attached to it. I just found it interesting.
Well, that's gonna happen for forever. All right. So
let's move on from the riverboat, please.
Let's move on from the riverboat, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I gotta say, we already brought it up, but to me, the highlight of the whole episode has got to be the Tauntaun like ghoul. How incredible was that? We've seen.
God, it was amazing.
We've seen people, smear themselves with the blood. We've seen them maybe pull a body on top of them and hide and do whatever. There's lots of different versions of that. But the fact that she opened up the rib cage and put it around them so that they were encased by the Zed, so that they were, they had both the coverage of like a live person wouldn't be able to notice they were there, and another zombie would go right past them as well. So I thought it was amazing. I know that you did too. Without even asking.
That was great. My comment was great gross out. Just Alpha, she kills the one ghoul, and like she can't get the knife out of its skull, and it falls on her, and she's kind of trapped underneath it. And of course, Lydia is panicking because there's other ghouls, and there are other people from the boat who have been shot or wounded, and they are dragging themselves out of the water, and so the ghouls are eating them right in front of her and getting closer. And so what are you going to do? Oh, that's all right. Let's just open up the school. Just unfold it, right? Remove tab A from slot B and open up the ribs. and then just have Lydia just come on right in here, and then you see Alpha kind of rub it on her face, right?
Yep.
The blood, all that, and then they kind of ride out all of the violence that's going on as basically everybody on the riverboat except for Brooke gets whacked in that sequence. They're all dead.
It was great.
It really was. It was well done. It was gross. It was funny, and it was also a little scary at the same time. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was really good.
It was great too because I've mentioned before, like, my wife is moderately interested in the anthology because, as she said, she doesn't have to pay attention to like a greater, larger story. It's just stories that happen within, right? And so she didn't watch the last one with me, but she did watch this one, at least parts of it. No, she watched almost the whole thing with me. And just when it got to that moment and she broke it open, and I was like, oh man, and I was reacting out loud, and she was like, her face was like absolute gross out. She was like, ugh, gross. What is happening? What am I watching? What am I voluntarily watching here?
Awesome.
And I thought it was great. It's a use of a zombie we haven't seen yet in this universe. We haven't seen someone like hide themselves that way. It was a really gross and disgusting and very ingenious way of using a zombie body. I thought I was fantastic. It's the highlight of the episode to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was right there with you.
Yeah. So they do get away, and they get to the, let's see. What else have you hit? Oh, you got the gross on the ghoul on top of her. Let's did they get to they found what's her face first, or they got to the RV thing first?
No. They get up and they leave, and then the first thing that happens is they come upon Brooke.
Okay, so she's like not far from where they are, probably.
Yeah, and Brooke has somehow survived. She somehow has gotten off the boat without being shot, without being wounded, and so Alpha's like, well, I'm gonna go kill her because she, basically, because remember before Billy and his boys, launched their coup. Brooke comes to see Alpha and says, Lydia, because Lydia's not in the room, right? And Brooke's like, Lydia's, she's staying with me, or she's not here. She needs some time away from you. Like, basically, this is like child services of the ZA going, we don't believe you're a fit parent here, and so your child is getting some time away from you. And right then, that puts her on the top of Alpha's, enemies list, and clearly, she's gonna get hers, and so she's gonna go whack her right there, and Lydia like begs her not to don't kill her. Remember, she pulls a gun out. She has a gun, and Brooke is totally given up at this point, right? She's just on her knees, like, fine, everything that I built is gone, so why not, and. Ends up, Lydia says, don't do it, so she doesn't. And then I love this bit. She comes back to Brooke, and she like slices her face open from like her eyeball all the way down over her lips to like her chin with that knife. And she kind of says, every time, you look in the mirror, you see this mark, you're going to think of me. And and my comment was, because she goes back and she tells Lydia, see, I didn't kill her. And I'm like, yeah, Mama didn't kill Brooke. The infection that's going to set in from that massive wound I gave her, that's going to kill her,
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that sequence happens, and then they find the trailer park. So
yeah.
But it was a nice way to kind of write out Brooke, because you really get the sense that she didn't live too much longer after that scene.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, and it's a good example of just how, extreme Alpha will go, right? When she feels that, someone has wronged her and needs to be punished, there, if that means slicing your face open, that's what she's going to do.
It's interesting too that they also, you were shown a moment that, like, in any other timeline with Alpha, because we're so used to her being as ruthless as she is, and she's all about teaching people the lesson. I'm very interested in the fact that she's still in a place where she heeds her daughter's wishes. I thought that was very interesting. Because when she was like, see, Mama's not taking this, and she's leaving the gun behind, and then when you see the knife, I was like, oh, she's just gonna cut her throat and just be like, come on, let's go. but she didn't do that. So I was very surprised that she actually listens to Lydia and didn't do it, but still did something so vicious. And like you said, it in the long run may kill her anyway, or will likely kill her. But I just thought that was very interesting, that what we are used to in the Alpha and Lydia dynamic is something very different. You know, she's very she gives a lot of lip service to, like, I would do anything for my daughter, you know. But but this is, she actually did, you know. Lydia asked, don't do it, mommy, please don't do it, and she did. Like, she follow her wishes. I was. Were you surprised by it too?
I mean, in the moment, yes, I was, because again, like you said, I'm used to seeing like the final version of Alpha that we saw on the main show, where, you know, no, Lydia, whatever, you can go rot. I'm going to do what I want to do. But when I watched it the second time, and at that point, I, you know, just was fully aware of, okay, this is like the development of Alpha. You know, she's becoming the person that we know her as. And so it's sort of, she's taking steps, and I think that the writer really wanted to kind of show us that, you know, at the beginning of the episode, she's trying to fit in, like you said. She even took a subservient role. She was like the cleaning lady, and she did that because she still had some belief in people, in society. And then, of course, Billy shows up. She immediately sees Billy's has to go. No one else agrees with her. And then, you know, Billy comes back because she was right. And so all those people getting killed, she's like, you know, what does Brooke say? Like, when Brooke's like, you know, you're responsible for this. You killed all my people. They're all dead. And her answer is, yep. And they would have killed Lydia and me too if they had the chance. You know, and literally, like you said, I will do anything to protect my daughter, and if that means sacrificing all of you sad sacks, that's what's going to happen. Right. You know, and so we kind of see the progression of her moving away from someone who, you know, has hair and wears clothes most of the time and sleeps in a bed and so on, to crazy Alpha whisperer we saw in the main show. This is sort of like she's on the path, and we're seeing her taking those steps. And so the second time through, it made a lot more sense. But the first time, I was kind of like, really? You're not going to kill her? That doesn't seem like you.
It's very out of character for you.
I agree with you that when I watched it the first time, when I didn't know what was happening, I hadn't, you know, wasn't familiar with how the story's going to run, it did not strike me as a true note on her character, much like you pointed out. But the second time, when I thought, okay, she's not who we know her as, she's, you know, pre that, it made a little more sense.
Okay, I can see that, absolutely. So they make it to this fancy RV
Sunny
park.
Creek. That's right. Sunny Creek.
I mean, it's all
cable
about
TV and Wi-Fi.
The propane tank buyback program, or whatever.
Oh, that's right.
Was.
You can have 2 tanks full and ready to go.
Two tanks.
2. Right. Move awnings and lawn furniture. Provide ours outdoor fun.
So obviously this scene was all about seeing how unwilling and unable Lydia is to do, like, the putting down a zombie. like fighting one and like hitting it in the head and doing whatever, and she just can't do it. She just is so averse to it, and she won't do it. And it was interesting because you could see that Alpha was frustrated, but she also was still thinking about like, well, you know, there was 3 of them, I think. And so pulling down the awning made it a little easier for her to be able to, you know, bing, bing, bing and get them all really quickly, which was, you know, thinking on her feet and cunning and, you know, the things that we expect from Alpha. She's very like she's definitely the forward thinker who thinks about, well, if I do this, this will happen and I could do X, Y, and Z down the road. So, you know, she's definitely smart in those aspects. But did you think that it was sort of abrupt? Like, I felt like it was like she just all of a sudden was like, they went from this traumatic experience, 2 of them, traumatic experience, then another traumatic experience where she begs her mom not to kill someone, and then they make it to this RV park and she's like, hands the knife and she's like, here you go, now you need to do it. I was like, should we maybe ease her into this, or what? I don't know. What did you think about that?
Again, you're right. It's like you kind of had the thought of, now this is when we're going to have our training happen.
Right.
You know,
right today, right now, right
at this moment, this is a good idea. But at the same time, it struck me as that's an Alpha move. Right. You know, where you know, she is convinced that, you know, the world is a horrible, horrible place and everything will kill you in it. And you can only rely on yourself and your mother, of course. And so Lydia has to learn to take care of herself. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you kind of get that. It's either you're going to kill them or they're going to kill you. And one way or the other, you know, this is going to be resolved. And, of course, there's a third option, which is Lydia just freaks out and won't do it. And then she eventually, you know, Mama has to step in and do it. But yeah, it kind of, I almost had the sense of, you know, hey, we only have like 8 minutes of the episode left and we're never going to see these people again. So it's going to happen now. Right. You know,
we still got stuff to get to. So let's go.
Yeah. You know, we have the Whisperers to meet. So kill these guys. Let's go. So
yeah. What are you waiting for?
So yeah, it on the one hand, I felt it made sense that Alpha would be like, all right, you know, this is what you do. And again, actually the comment that I had on here is that Alpha, you know, she gets Lydia close to her. She puts the knife in her hand, and she's like, I can't do it, Mama, I can't do it. And Alpha's like, yes, you can. It's going to be great. And then she goes, and you hold this, and she goes, and we're going to go straight for the head, okay? And I'm like, oh, so close. So close. You know, it's like, oh, couldn't you have said aim? Couldn't you? But no, it was, you know, we're going to go straight for the head. Damn it. You know, it's like, Alpha. Yeah. So, but yeah, like I said, it makes sense in the Alpha would do it overall, but just for like the kind of extreme, like you said, like Lydia's had a bad day here, and it's like now you're going to pile on by making her, you know. Yeah, you know, it's like very traumatic for this little girl. Lots for her to talk about her therapist one day. And now we're going to add to it by saying, oh, and now you're going to go kill those 3 dead things. You know, it's like, okay, a bit much overall. A bit.
Agreed. And it was interesting because.
But again, so close.
I know. I couldn't tell if she was assessing. Was she looking for supplies? Well, she did, because she found a little bit of food and she shared it. But I wonder if she was sort of assessing the trailer as like, can we stay here for a little while? Because I feel
that's what I got.
Yeah, same. I was just making sure that was the same vibe that was sort of being given off. Okay, cool. Yeah. But you know,
because she like checks the gas, and there clearly was gas in those tanks, 2 tanks, and so she's like, okay. So they have some natural gas there, or propane and propane accessories, if you want to go that way. So she's like, okay, first of all, this is looking good. So then what does she do? She opens up the trailer. She makes the noise to see if there are any ghouls in there. when it appears to be empty, then she tells Lydia to come on in, and then she starts checking it out. That's when she finds the whatever it was, a protein bar or something. It was in a package. And then, if you remember, she goes into like the other end of the RV, and she finds the tea set in the box.
Yeah, and she was just about ready to give it to her. Yeah.
And she's like, maybe we can have our own party, you know, and because, again, Lydia wanted to, you know, her birthday was coming up and she wanted to have a garden party, and they didn't know what that was and all that stuff. And so here is like her being a mom actually coming out. Right. Like a regular mom. And she's like, maybe we can have our own party. But then, of course, Lydia is not in the trailer. She's back outside, and she's like, there are people here, mama. And it's like, yeah, kid, you got to learn to tell the difference between ghouls and people. Okay? Yeah. They ain't people.
Yeah, those are dead people, my love.
That's right.
You have to stick a thing in their head. You might even need to aim for their head. I'm just saying, Samantha Morton could have said aim for the head, right?
I think we should change the podcast to straight for the head from now on. So
yeah, and as soon as we do, everyone's going to start saying aim for the head, and then
I know, right?
Unbelievable.
It's not good. But yeah, I agree with you. I totally got the sense that Alpha was looking at that trailer of, hey, maybe we can hole up here for a while and kind of like let things calm down.
Yeah. So obviously that didn't work out very well. No. And so they left that area, and then
Lydia goes running away.
Oh, she runs away and she has to go find her. Yeah.
Right, and so when she does, that's when Lydia's like, I heard the trees talking to me, and you're just like, okay, crazy girl, and yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say this. I know, but what's funny about that is that I took a little moment after I was in between watching Two Towers and Return of the King, and I watched this episode, and at some point
they're talking.
Yeah, as soon as the trees were talking, I was like, oh, they're really smart. You should talk to the trees. They'll go and they'll help you because they're gonna take over Isengard. And I was like, oh, wrong nerd area. Wrong nerd. I was wrong.
Patricia Tallman would be very pleased with you, but yes, wrong nerd pull. So
yeah, exactly. So she's immediately like, the trees are talking to me, and I think Alpha's got the, oh man, my daughter's going crazy. I don't know what to do.
She's like, I thought I was crazy, but you're crazy.
Yeah. So she's trying to calm her down, and she goes, oh, it's okay, everything's fine, whatever. And then she takes out the knife. She's like, Mommy, you'll make it all better. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God. Now, again, like you said, no stakes there. We know that she's fine. But even though we knew that she was going to be fine, we don't know, if Lydia, what if that scene was Lydia turns and sees the knife and is like, Mama, what were you gonna do? And then sets up their relationship or whatever from here on out. But no, then we had the Whisperers come along, and they're like, shh, whisper, don't talk loud. And you're like,
save her.
Yeah.
Don't kill her. Go back to the riverboat. All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting.
Are cool. Yeah, that's right. You should have said aim for the head. All that stuff. I had this weird thought of maybe Alpha kills Lydia here, and then she finds some other kid down the road and just says, "You're Lydia, come with me." And it's
can you
Lydia
imagine
we
how
know is yeah, it would be silly, but at the same time it's I could see her doing that, so
interesting. That'd be a weird wrinkle. So obviously, and she's interrupted from whatever it is she's going to do there by meeting the Whisperers. But let's talk for a second before that. Right before that, did we know that she was willing to murder Lydia to save her? That's a new emotion for Dee to have, don't you think?
Yeah, the only thing that comes close to it is when Lydia was caught by our people in the main show. Alpha didn't really seem all that broken up by it.
Yeah.
And almost kind of like, well, she wasn't strong enough to not have it happen or whatever.
She got to learn her lesson. You're like, huh?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you're like, what do you mean? But she's going to learn how to sleep in a bed again, but yeah, so I thought that the ending, I thought the fact that was the decision that she reached, again, you're absolutely right. Never going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. There's no chance that she's going to, do in her kid there, and possibly kill herself too. I don't know. They never got that far. But even though it was an impossible ending, I just thought what was really kind of, and I don't want to say creepy, but like eerie, unsettling, is that was the conclusion that her mind came to. In that, I mean, I get it. Yeah. If there are like 100 ghouls closing in on you and you have, one bullet left in the gun and there's no way out and your leg's broken and they're going to eat you, I see putting the gun in your mouth and pulling the trigger. I do. That makes sense because there's no other choice. But that wasn't their situation at all there,
Right.
They're in a bad spot, but they're both healthy. They're both ambulatory. It's daytime. They're not surrounded. You know what I mean? So it's like death, not exactly option number one here. And yet she is so distraught over how her daughter, hates her and is not becoming the woman or the girl that she wants her to be in terms of being able to take care of herself and all that, okay, yeah, you know what is a really good idea? I'm just going to kill you because that's going to solve the problem. That I thought was really kind of chilling. And it really gives you I thought a really nice window into how messed up Alpha is, if we didn't already know and have some examples before. It's just sort of like final proof, right? That this woman, she gone.
Yeah, she cray. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was
what did you think?
I thought it was interesting because like you were saying, like, we know she's going to be okay, that she doesn't get killed, but I don't think we ever knew that Alpha was willing to go that far this early on. Like, this is pre-Whisperers. I mean, it's very it's as close as you get to pre-Whisperers as you can, since the very next moment is meeting the Whisperers. But she's still on the journey to becoming the person that we got to know her as. And to know that this early on, she was fully willing to take that step so early on that she was brought to that sort of brink, that edge, that's definitely revealing. Like you said, even though we know that she didn't make that choice, or she was sort of talked out of that choice, it was interesting that was something about Alpha that we didn't know, that she was so willing so early on to do something like that. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk the final moment there. Obviously, is the meeting of the Whisperers, the very, very interesting meeting of the Whisperers. And this was a hard scene for me because I really liked it. I liked, I put that in my notes that I loved that final moment. I loved the reveal that the Whisperers were led by a woman. The Whisperers were led by some other woman. Alpha didn't create them, which I think is what we sort of, I don't want to say we're led to believe that, but I just assumed that Alpha found Beta and then found other people and pulled them in. They were already existing, and she's like, oh, that seems like a good idea. And obviously must have killed the leader and assumed the leadership role as one would in a animalistic society. An alpha person would do that. But I also thought...
I would just interject that we don't know for sure that Alpha killed Hera. I mean, most likely, but Hera could have just
I think the fact
Yeah.
that it was revealed that it's pretty clear that they're intimating that she wears Hera's face is really
Sure.
a good sign that she's probably. And here's the thing: part of that psychosis is she probably killed her to gain control of the group, but she wears the face and probably says to people, this is a tribute.
Right.
Kind of like how Beta put her face on his face. Like, this is a tribute to who this person was. I mean, she's just as likely to say something as wacko as that. I agree that it's not clear. It's not 100% clear. I think it is the most likely thing we are supposed to draw from that. And I thought that was super interesting, because here's this person who, Alpha she's very non-binary when you first meet her. She just does not, she's a mother and has a daughter, but she doesn't have any of the traditional feminine stereotypes that we're used to. And a lot of that has to do with her really believing in this whole pack mentality of, we're all the same animal, etc. But she always wore this mask that was it wasn't very feminine, but that long blonde hair that was a part of it is so opposite. It's opposite what Alpha was when she took it off, but it's also opposite of who she was before she became Alpha. She was this mouse little brown haired gal with, short, like shoulder length hair or whatever. And this blonde thing was just so different. It was almost like she's literally wearing a mask, but is it a figurative mask of like becoming this other person? And I've always wondered what the story behind her chosen mask was, and we got some answers to that, and I thought that was very interesting. Sadly, though, it was at the expense of the timeline. So I both loved the scene, but I also had some strong feelings about introducing something like this that would mess with the timeline. It just in the way that they told it. So what about you? How did you feel about that introduction to the Whisperers / who the fuck cares about timelines anymore?
I'm right there with you in that I had always kind of drawn the conclusion that Alpha and Lydia, like, in order to survive, they, were doing the guts thing and then evolved from that into the, if we were to cut someone's dead person's face off and then tan it like a piece of leather, and then we could wear it like a mask, that'll fool the ghouls, and then we don't have to have crud all over us all the time. And so they just started doing it, and then like you said, then they met some other survivor out in the road somewhere, and they kind of said, well, hey, we do this thing with the crazy mask, you could join us. And so then they did, and then they told two people, and then they told two people, and so on. And so then you have the Whisperers. I mean, that's kind of how I thought it worked.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now it's like, no, not really. Actually, she, much like my favorite place in the universe, the Riverboat, she started out at the bottom of that group, right? As just another newbie walking around, and worked her way up like she probably would have at the Riverboat had it survived, to the point where she's the boss. So I thought that was really an interesting revelation, because it totally went against. I mean, like you said, they never really told us how it started, but it just, you kind of assumed that she thought of it. I mean, I did, and to find out, no, actually, some other crazy person thought of this idea first, and she just sort of took it and made it her own thing. That was amazing. But like you said, as soon as I saw that, my first thought was, okay, and where did she meet Beta? Because, I mean, there's no way. Go back and watch that episode where she meets Beta. There's no way she knew about wearing the Whisperer masks in that moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, that version of Alpha has not been a Whisperer before. And so if that's the case, then when does this happen? this episode we just watched, and so I'm very confused.
Yeah. Would you have a problem with a storyline where she meets Beta?
Mhm.
So let's say she has the RV moment, and they're wandering around. Let's say they meet Beta, they have that experience at the asylum, and if she say goes somewhere and then meets the Whisperer, because the thing is that it's a direct result of that RV thing for her to have met the Whisperers, because Lydia runs away and she is comforting her when she first meets them. So
Well, she's gonna kill her.
Yeah. And the thing is too is when she meets Beta, they're in a city.
Well, aren't they in Texas? Isn't that where he is? I'd have to go back and
he
watch
left
it.
Texas. There's someplace else. I feel like somebody said it's Baltimore, which would be weird because doesn't it feel like she's somewhere.
Oh, she's in New Orleans or somewhere on the Gulf Coast. I mean, that they're in the swamps, they're in the bayous. I mean, they make that very clear.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that no one has a Southern accent except her, they're in the bayous, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. Like in my head just now, I was like, well, what if she met Beta, then left, ran into the Whisperers, and then was like, oh, there's this guy. He'd be perfect. Let me go get him.
Yeah,
believable.
All the way to Baltimore?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, believable, maybe. But how do you align the RV thing? So does she meet Beta, and then after leaving Beta, then they go find the RV? Like, just the timeline jumping around, I think and here's the thing, too, and you can explain it this way. She's telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
Alpha is. So she's not a reliable narrator because she's psychotic. So she's narrating this story, and we know that she's telling about, certain aspects of her and, trying to save Lydia and all this other stuff. So she could be telling the story and just misremembering it. Is that a possibility? I don't know.
That's an awful weak. That's weak sauce, counselor. If that's their excuse.
No,
she's just
agree.
lying, or no. And I think the whole idea. I mean, I get the sense in this episode that the coup happens on the boat. They get away in the dinghy. They get to the shore. They do the tauntaun ghoul. They recover from that. They find Brooke, slash her face open. Then they walk to the trailer park. There's not like a gap between those two moments that would allow her to go to Baltimore and find Beta and then leave and then come all the way back to, down south to then run into the trailer park in the Whisper. I don't sense that at all. So again, that's what is so disturbing, is that there is no way that this episode can match up with that other episode in a way that works, that makes sense.
Right, which is unfortunate. It's because they're, like I said, I liked the introduction of this other character, this leader of the Whisperers, who it appears she, wrestled the leadership away from, but there's just no real plausible way to explain this timeline,
Yeah.
And if you take the Beta episode with her, she certainly doesn't seem like, and you made this point too, we were talking about the timeline issues before we started recording. You make a good point, which is I don't see her, say, joining the Whisperers and then being let to leave the Whisperers to go searching around, like, say, and then find somebody like Beta. So I don't know. I'm really surprised. I'm really surprised that they messed with this timeline, like they did. I'm very, very surprised that they did. It's not like them to mess up a timeline thing like as big as this.
It would be very interesting to ask Angela Kang this question. And be
I'm sure she's
how
persona non grata. Like, how can you mess with my show?
Yeah. Well, she either that or she'll be like, it's wizards, magic, make your own damn show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, look, that's the way it is. But yeah, it would be real interesting to ask her or Nicotero or even a Scott Gimple or a Gail Ann Hurd or someone that is obviously at the executive level of this franchise, and their job is to make sure all the pieces fit together and just say, how does this episode fit in with what we know about Alpha and Beta? Because we can't figure it out.
Right. It's and if we're the people who watch your show all the time and we can't do it, what are you expecting of people that are less rabid fans of the franchise?
Right. Yeah.
To make those connections. So. Yeah, that's disappointing. Is there anything else about this episode that you think we didn't quite hit on or cover? Feels like we were pretty.
I know we really got into it, man. I didn't think we were going to talk this much, and I'm like, wow, we got some good discussion going here. That's very interesting. For an episode that both of us were kind of like, it's like, man, we had a lot to talk about. So
yeah.
There's just a couple moments I wrote down that I liked that I thought were fun, and most of them involve Billy. When he and his crew are there, and they've got most of the people on the boat, and they're on like the aerobics deck, and they're all on their knees, right? And Billy is sort of walking around holding the gun, and he talks about he has this line where he's like pointing out how some people are making an effort to look nice and fit in, and other people are just kind of wearing the clothes they came in on and just sort of like taking the free meal and not participating. And he looks at one of them, he goes, "You act like the world is over, so for you it should be." And he points the gun at him. They're like, "Ah!" And they're screaming, and I thought that was kind of fun. And then he admits that he killed the old dude that was drunk at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
He like threw him overboard, and he goes, yeah, he doesn't really have anything to offer. And then he goes on and he says something like, and I thought Erica was aging out too. And Erica's this woman that he was with earlier, and it cuts to her and she just looks at him and she just mouths, "Fork you." And I thought that was pretty fun. And then when he basically points out that there are 6 of his people, so they have to make 6 vacancies on the boat, so there's enough, it'll work, that they're not overpopulated. They don't that obviously the boat is designed, the structure of that society is set up for only so many people, and you can't go over, otherwise there won't be enough food or whatever. So he's like, we're going to have to get rid of 6 of you, And once he starts doing that, I thought it was awesome how all of Brooks' people immediately start ratting each other out. Like, you should kill her. Don't kill me. All of them were just begging, whining for their lives. And I just thought, yep, they're rats. It's just, and I think that moment was there to kind of prove Alpha's point that she makes to Lydia later on, which is that, people are chaos and you can't trust them. They're going to always turn on you. All the things that she says that she thinks is real in her head, they kind of show us happening in real life during the story to kind of say, yeah, see, this is how people see all these people you thought were your friends. They would have killed you in an instant if it would have saved their life. They don't care.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool. Again, riverboats are the greatest thing on the planet, and so I really liked that part of the show. I just, like I said, I wish, as much fun as the Sunny Creek RV trailer park was, I would have been much happier if the whole majority of this episode was just on the boat and we just learned as much as we could about that little group and how they were, working and going. So, But again, yeah, I thought I liked Billy. I thought the actor that played him had a lot of fun playing him, and he was a great douche nozzle for that episode.
And we need those. We need to have good ones.
You do. I mean, he almost had like a little sense of Negan in him, I mean, like Negan light, and that he's very cavalier and clearly enjoying the fact that he was in charge. I love when he told Brooke that she could still be in charge of Pep. And she's like, Pep, and he's just like, yeah, that's what you're going to do, Yeah. So I liked a lot of those moments, but that was really the only couple things that we didn't touch on that I thought were kind of fun. So
yeah, all right. Well, that's gonna wrap up our thoughts on the actual episode itself. We're gonna go ahead, folks, and we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back and discuss all of our listener feedback we got this week. We got some great stuff, and we're gonna talk about what's coming up next on the podcast.
So please, unless you're going to a riverboat, stick around, because we'll be right back.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man up bad and he's attacking another man. Looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are biting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned
Toxic
over.
Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiences, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from DriveThruRPG.com or ToxicBag.com.
Hi, this is Tom Savini, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
So a million thanks go out to Mr. Sex Machine himself, Tom Savini. Thanks for recording that little drop there for us. And hey there, everyone. We are back. We're back to chat.
That's right. That was so awesome when we asked him and he said, yeah, sure, what the hell. That was pretty cool.
I love it. I love people that are like, yeah, whatever, we'll do it, which is great. So this week we got some really great feedback for just this week's episode. We didn't get any sort of prior feedback, which has sort of been how it's been working, but not this week. So Steve, why don't you jump in and grab the first one, and then we'll go from there.
All righty. Well, our first bit of feedback came via email, and this is from our number one fan in Germany, Andy.
Hey,
so
Andy.
Hello, Andy. Thank you so much for sticking with it. I know that this show is really not hitting very much with you, but it's awesome that you're still sending us your thoughts, which is really cool. So he says, hi, Diana and Steve. I will at least check out every episode of The Tales. I watched episode 3, and I think the ending makes no sense. Alpha and Lydia meet Beta before they became Whisperers. Since Beta isn't there yet, they cannot meet the Whisperers yet. Apart from that, the episode was better than the first two, but I wouldn't have needed another Alpha backstory after the one we got in the main show. And you know what? I think we kind of said a lot of those points ourselves in the first part of the show. I think we're right there with you, Andy, that, I think I started out by saying this is the Alpha backstory that I didn't want, that I didn't need. And I think very valid points there. He goes on to say, by the way, there is no German version of Tales of the Walking Dead. This seems to indicate they don't expect high viewer numbers, since till now there always have been German versions of all the Walking Dead series. Greetings, Andy from Germany. And so so they have not bothered to translate or dub this show in German, I think is what he's saying, right?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, that might explain why we got earlier feedback. I wonder if there's access to the English language version if you're online, but obviously Andy would have a preference of hearing it in German or seeing it at least subtitled in German or something, and to not have that available that may be the version. I guess we're asking that question to you, Andy. I wonder, is that the one that releases maybe a day or two late, but if you get like on the Sunday or whatever from the app itself, perhaps that English language one, which is obviously not your preference, is available sooner. So I'm curious about the timing of that. That's why. Yeah. But thanks for writing in, Andy.
Thank you so much for writing in, Andy. I'm glad you're sticking with it. And, Anthony Edwards is next week, and there's 2 more after that. So, maybe there is a gem, a diamond in the rough here that we will be like, wow, that episode was awesome.
Yeah, and I'm hoping it's next week because I do love me some Anthony Edwards. So.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right. So next up, we had some more feedback from our pal Amelia from Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique. Hey, Amelia, we are so excited to hear from you, as always. She's a tried and true. She's an every weeker. So thanks for writing in there, Amelia. She sent in her thoughts via email and says to us, well, here we are halfway through the anthology series I was super excited about. And after watching episode 3, I'm sort of sitting here going, huh? Honesty, I love it. And she goes on to say, I love Samantha Morton. The crush is just as strong as always. And I went into this totally down for whatever additional alpha backstory they wanted to give me. But as soon as I saw Lydia, I got confused and thrown off by when this story was set compared to what we already had seen of her pre-Whisperer life, because she looked to be about halfway age-wise between the backstory bits and when we met her. And then I'm like, the hell we doing on a friggin' riverboat? That seems like an odd choice and not particularly safe. And it's interesting because I agree with what you were saying, Steve, about how a boat seems like a safer choice because, like you said, it's not like people can like walk right up to you and take your place over, etc. There are some unsafe elements, though. You are sort of sitting ducks and unable to be sort of camouflaged when you're, just in a boat in the middle of the water. So I can see Amelia's take on that. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then she goes on to say, and then some friggin' whispers show up. What? Like, wait. What? Didn't we? I mean, wasn't she? What? I think you just vocalized every fan's feeling when they saw the whisper portion added in. Not that it was there, but when and how and who and what? I'm right there with you.
I think it was more of how could it be there?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So she goes on to say, so we've had one episode I enjoyed, one that felt shoehorned in, and then this confusing atrocity. But hey, Anthony Edwards next week, so yay, I guess. And then she says, confetti, party horn. and I certainly hope so, because I do enjoy Anthony Edwards. He's really fantastic. So I'm hoping, I'm crossing my fingers that that's the one that's a real, like, at least 80% or more better, than we're expecting. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. The episode Amelia, I think, like you said, Dee, that her, the way she described it, I think was the reaction we all had. The crazy people like us that are really into this show and remember all of the old episodes where it doesn't fit.
Yeah. And Amelia, we're not saying that you're crazy. We're saying that your fandom is crazy, which is the same thing. I mean,
we're kind of saying you're crazy, Amelia. I think we are.
We're saying that it's a collective. We are crazy. It's not that you are. It's that you belong to our group.
Yeah, and it's not like you're gonna come up to Dee and like slice her face open from her eye to her chin, crazy. But it's like crazy.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again for writing in, Amelia.
Just remember, Amelia, she's the one that called you crazy. I just want to make that perfectly clear. I didn't. So, yeah.
Look at you.
Anyway, moving on. Our next piece of feedback comes from Alex Baelish. Hello, Alex. And this came via the email, and he goes, I know I try to be lighthearted with my comments, but this episode floored me as a parent of a young 7-year-old. You can say Alpha was off of the reservation crazy, and you would be correct, but the love for her daughter was matched by any parent. Teaching your child how to live in any world is challenging enough. I can't imagine the mistakes I would and could have made if that was me in this world. When the world changed, some people could not handle it, and others adapted very well. How do you teach a little girl to understand what she needs to do at that young age? I can't imagine what they both went through in those moments. Now, that said, she took it to a level that Crazy Town would be shocked to see, and she became slightly misguided. And then he puts in the kind of crazy emoji face. He goes, this episode has to be considered the best of Tales. It's not just because of the writing and acting, but we know and love the character's story so well. They finally reward us with this story. My only criticism, if you want to call it that, was I would have loved to see more of how she rose to power in the Whisperers. Now, to the boat people. How dumb was Brooke and the rest of the leadership thinking they can run the boat the way they did? You knew the bartender was up to no good the minute he talked to D Alpha and he was on her list, which kind of what I pointed out, right? That he was, kind of calling her, why do you look like shit? And why aren't you sitting with your daughter? All that stuff that he said. It was just like, really? That's how you're going to talk to her? He goes, I love how she always has an exit plan. I think that is why Carol and her are such good TV. They are the same person and could be flipped. Remember where Carol came from, and she rose up to answer the call. By the way, I did love the interview, and yes, I knew who, I'm guessing he's talking about Patricia Tallman, was. And so then he gives us a bunch of crazy emojis, and that's interesting. So, as I wanted all Riverboat, and Alex would have been happy if it just was the episode started with when they meet the Whisperers, and we just saw more of that, rise to power play out. And it's interesting, that I think Alex, if they would have done that, I think they would have opened themselves up to, we've already seen Alpha in the Whisperers for like 3 years on the main show. So why do we need more? You know what I mean? Even though it would have been cool to see her rise to power, it's definitely more of a been there, done that moment that we've gotten a lot of. And so I think that might have colored their decision to, we'll bring the Whisperers in at the very end, but this is more of a Alpha getting to the stage of, I want to be the head Whisperer, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think it helps lay some of the groundwork for her seeing how societies are run wrong. The first group that they're with the husband, she sees all the things those people are doing wrong. She sees all the things that Brooke is doing wrong and how she would do them differently. And she takes that knowledge and she brings it to the Whisperers. But I feel like there's also going to be some more to it. There's got to be some more. But I can see how they were sort of setting those layers up in this episode for sure. So there's that.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for writing in, Alex.
Yeah, Alex is awesome.
Yeah, he always does. He actually feels bad when he misses it. He'll message me and be like, I missed your deadline.
As well.
Damn it, Alex.
Should.
Ugh.
That's right. Give me my knife.
What can you expect from a Yankees fan? Anyway. So next up, we got some feedback via the Facebook. And this is from Karen Cohen. Hey, Karen, thanks so much for writing in. And
hello, Karen. I'm curious. Are you related to Lauren, perhaps? Do you have a cousin?
Cousin Lauren. Very famous cousin Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Karen writes in, I finally caved and I signed up for AMC Plus because there is no other way to watch this damn show. I watched the first episode and then went upstairs where my husband is a storyboard artist. How awesome is that? And had a client who he was angry with. He wasn't hating painting, but he was definitely furiously drawing at his computer. So I had a little laugh about that. That's interesting. Art,
fun.
Interceding in your regular day life. I like that. I watched D the episode. And man, I thought my parents had issues. Yikes. Sorry. Lydia actually seems somewhat rational and normal, quote unquote normal, compared to what she could be growing up with D/Alpha as a mother. I tend to yell at my kids a lot for having such big ears. They can't hear anything, but the D way, as she puts it in quotes, is definitely not the way I am with my kids. This episode was okay. I guess I'm pretty okay with any Walking Dead content in front of my face.
Yeah.
I like that.
Wow. So
good way to
she's
put it.
saying that the bar is not very high at the Cohen household for Walking Dead. So
apparently. And can I introduce you to a pile of steaming dew called Fear the Walking Dead?
Fear the Walking Dead. Hey, the first 3 seasons were pretty good.
Yeah, but that's it. And pretty good is stretching it for some of those episodes. I mean, come on.
Oh, I know.
Back to that first season.
I know. I do.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I do agree with her that, and this is something you think about when you watch these kind of flashbacks and you look at the way Cassidy McClinchy plays the teenage Lydia, the current Lydia, right? And a lot of it's the writing too. She is very well adjusted and normal for what she went through. You know what I mean? Where you're like, wow, wow, for what you were given, and like the tools and the instruction you were given by Crazy Mom, you are incredibly normal compared to, like she said, what she could be, right? And I think we kind of excuse a lot of that and forget a lot of that, and then you see this episode and you're like, oh yeah, it was like crazy town for her growing up. I mean, there was never any moments you doubt that she was happy, right? I mean, so yeah, that's a good observation by Karen.
Thanks for writing in, Karen. We appreciate it, and thanks for signing up for AMC Plus so that you can follow along on this, this quasi good, quasi bad journey that we're all on together.
It's the only way to watch this damn show. I love it.
Yeah,
I think that should be the tagline on their commercials. All right, so moving on, our next piece of feedback came from our pal Alma Contreras. Hello, Alma. And she did this via the Facebook, and she says, pretty good episode. Definitely better than that Groundhog Day stuff we got last week. She says, I only had one gripe, and that was this story not meshing with the backstory they gave us on The Walking Dead. And yeah, I think that's a pretty common theme from across the interwebs, that most of the reaction from the fans that I've seen on Twitter and some of the other places is, how does this episode fit in with what they've already told us?
Right.
And like we just spent a good 20 minutes talking about, we can't figure it out. So yeah. Alma, I agree with you. I disagree with you in that I think the Groundhog Day episode is the best one of the 3 so far. Mm-hmm. But I do agree with you that this episode, the timeline doesn't really work.
Right. So. Yeah. Agreed. Thanks for writing in, Alma. We appreciate it. Next Absolutely. Next up, we heard from our pal Diane Lasorsa via Facebook. Haven't heard from you in a while, Diane. I'm so glad you're watching the anthology. And I think she had an autocorrect in hers, but I'm going to read it and then say what I thought she said. So Diane writes in and says, pretty good episode. Better than the first 2. I am confused about the end. It doesn't Aitchison with the Walking Dead story. I'm thinking she meant to say match, but maybe she only wrote the ATCH of match and it auto-corrected her into something else. So we're going to go with it doesn't match with the Walking Dead story. Because
Wait. Whoa. You're not familiar with Atchison? I mean, that is like a very common word, all right? It's like you've never said to your wife, like, hey, does this shirt Atchison with my shoes? I mean, that's a very common thing. I'm really surprised to see that you're not up on that.
Why do you torture me so? Why must you be such a pain in the butt?
This is our 150th time we've done this.
Together, yes. I'm not regretting any of them.
No. You're thinking, why didn't I just end it when I had the chance?
Oh.
I agree. I think you're right. I think she missed the M maybe, and she wrote ATCH, and the way that the computers do it, it just went, oh, okay, you mean this, and in we went.
Yeah.
But
but if you're not paying attention
Diane,
and you're putting your stuff in there quick, I've done it a million times. So.
Oh yeah. Diana, if we are wrong and you actually did mean to say Atchison, I really want you to write in and explain the definition of Atchison, because I want to use it from now on, and I want to know what the correct meaning is. It looks like it's a verb. Maybe it's an adjective. I don't know. But please fill us in, because I think it's awesome.
Yes, absolutely. I want to learn what the Atchison means.
Yes,
so,
I do too. Anyway. I do. I'm curious. So, all right. So our final piece of feedback comes from Blanca Camacho, and I want to say, is this a first time?
I think so. I don't think we've ever heard from Blanca before.
Well, if this is the first time, welcome and greetings, and thank you so much for writing and putting in your 2 cents worth. That's awesome. And she did this via the Twitter. And I believe it was to the picture of like an alpha when she's out on the road. I think was that picture you posted, where like she and Lydia are walking. I think wasn't that the one?
Yeah.
And she says, Blanca says, I switched channels as soon as I saw it was about Alpha. Can't stand the character. Feel the same about the actress portraying it. Watch me, how natural I act, while being over the top and corny as heck. Thought we were done with Alpha. I certainly am. And then a big thumbs down, and then hashtag Tales of the Walking Dead. So I mean, Blanca, my comment would be, don't sugarcoat it. Tell us what you really think here.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on the episode? And did you like it?
Yeah, because
we kid.
No, again, I love it. I love that she just came right out and was like, ugh, Alpha waste. And I mean, I like the character of Alpha, and Samantha Morton, she will always be my favorite precog, no matter what, and I will fight you to the death on that one. So I like her as an actor, but I do agree with you that a little part of me was kind of like, this is an anthology, and the whole point of it is we're going to see parts of the world of The Walking Dead we've never seen before. Why are we wasting a whole episode, 1/6 of this season, on something we've seen before? And so I kind of agree with Blanca on that it's like, I would have rather seen them just trailblaze and tell a new story than to bring up a character we've already experienced. But that, again, that would be it, though. I like Alpha, I like Samantha Morton, so I think there's a little disconnect there. But what about you?
Well, I mean, I like Samantha Morton too. I think she's great. I think Alpha's a great character. What were you saying?
You're thinking about dinner, aren't you?
Yeah, my dinner's on the way. So I can understand the here's the thing too. We're talking about characters that are based off of a comic book, where things have to be drawn very dramatic and have like a sense of real like page turnerness to their character. And I can see how Alpha, kind of like how Negan and the governor and all of these big bads they've always got an element of over the top to them. So I can see that. And not every character is for everybody, I honestly, to me, sadly, I think they included in the Alpha thing so that they could guarantee they'd get some Walking Dead people to watch at least one of the episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I feel
Absolutely.
like that was without question, that was put in there that way. So that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. But thanks for your
legit.
Yeah, thanks for your candidness there, Blanca. Not everybody likes every character, so that's a shame. I'm curious if you've watched the other episodes, if you've liked those, and if you're gonna watch the Anthony Edwards one, because I mean, come on, Dr. Mark Green, how can you go wrong, right?
It's Goose.
I know. That's good. It's Goose.
Talk to me, Goose.
Talk to me, Goose. All right. So I'm talking to you people, and I'm telling you what's coming up on the podcast. So first of all, we do not have a new podcast next week. So next new podcast will be in 2 weeks. And I know what you're thinking, and no, don't be sad. Don't grab Kleenex. You're fine. It's just that I am on vacation next week. That's all.
Diana's
so next
going
week,
to a riverboat.
I wish. I mean, obviously, I have to see what makes them so exciting for you. So right. I will still put out some posts and ask for your feedback next week, because I want to hear your thoughts. We'll compile them together, and Steve and I will cover both episode 4 and 5 in 2 weeks. So we may just do like our top 5 from each episode. We'll see how we, because we're gabbers. We like to talk, and 3 hours is just not a feasible amount of time for people to listen to our voices. I don't want to listen to our voices for 3 hours. So there it is. So we will be looking for feedback from episode 4 and episode 5. Here's the information we have so far about episode 4, which, as I've mentioned about a few thousand times, it is the Anthony Edwards episode. Title of the episode is Amy/Dr. Everett. I don't think that he's Amy, but you never know. I mean, you never know. He could be Dr. Everett. He could be Amy. He could be neither one of those characters. And they're talking about someone else. Never assume, people. That's for sure. This is the description we've been given of the episode. In a nature documentary set in the quote unquote dead sector, a naturalist who studies walkers encounters a spirited settler. An unlikely respect is forged between the two as the settler tries to argue in favor of people taking back the land from the dead. Interesting. Nature documentary. And then the episode after that, which we will also be looking for feedback for, in 2 weeks, we will get episode 5. Title is, and you were saying Davon. I think it's Devon. Davon. Devon.
Okay.
That's my take. And the description we've received is in a noir-ish fractured memory thriller. A young stranger suddenly wakes up in a dangerous foreign town with no memory of how he got there. He must piece together fragments of his broken mind to uncover why the townspeople accuse him of murder. I don't want to be weird, but does it seem like neither one of those are descriptions of an episode that involves zombies?
No, I mean, particularly that last one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's Devon definitely doesn't, but it does seem like, okay, it's going to have some other thing to it, much like the Groundhog Day episode that we've never seen before in the Walking Dead universe, with the whole fractured memory, kind of a Memento thing, maybe, right? Where, he wakes up, he doesn't know, he has no memory, and then he's slowly piecing it together as he's moving around, meeting people and experiencing things. And so I'm excited for that one, and I'm definitely excited for the Anthony Edwards one. It looks like he's like the guy that's trying to solve the problem with science. Yes, and he runs into the settler girl who, is more about, no, we should just kill all of them and, retake the land because we know people need to live, and we're going to see them forge a friendship, maybe, butt heads about different ideologies and so on. And like you said, Anthony Edwards is usually money, so I have high hopes for both of these episodes.
Excellent. And speaking of episodes, you heard Alex speak of an interview episode, and I know it seems like I'm beating a dead horse for those that listen every week, so I'm sorry, folks. But we are very excited that we got a chance to speak with Patricia Tallman. If you haven't listened to the first 2 episodes of this season and you're just jumping in now and you're just hearing about it, we'd love to share that with you. It is episode number 262. So at this point, you got to back up 3 episodes to listen to that. We had such a great time. It was lovely to speak with her. She's a really fascinating person, and obviously she has a horror background, a science fiction background, a stunt woman background, but it was great to talk to her about those things, her current life, the things she's doing these days, and can't oversell that interview enough. So if you're interested, back up a couple of episodes, take a listen. We'd love to love for you to listen to it. Yeah.
She was delightful.
She was delightful. She was very delightful. We do have a tiny bit of Walking Dead news to share. If you have been living under a rock, they did. It was big excitement. They renamed the series, the Maggie Negan series. They had been calling it, what was it? Isle of the Dead?
Isle of the Dead, yeah.
But they made a switch to it. It's now Dead City. So to be The Walking Dead, Dead City.
Dead City. Interesting.
Yeah. Which, I don't know, either one of them. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's totally unfeasible that Maggie would ever go anywhere with Negan. So I still call BS on this whole series, but who knows? Maybe they'll sell me on it with whatever the final moments are of the Walking Dead season. We'll see. I love those actors. I think they're great. I love their characters. The feasibility of this actually happening in that universe, just it stretches the imagination, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I'm still gonna watch, of course. And like I said, they still have a chance to create a situation where this would actually happen. You know, like Herschel gets kidnapped by someone who goes and runs to New York and takes him away, and that's why they go there. Who the hell knows? But so they still have an opportunity to make it seem like this would actually happen. And like I said, love the actors, love their characters. As long as it's feasible, then hopefully it'll be an enjoyable, series. So there's that. And we did get some really interesting Jeffrey Dean Morgan news, and I am over the moon excited for this one. It was announced just a couple of days ago. It was a pretty, just a very recent announcement. He has been added to the cast for The Boys for season 4. We have no information about how many episodes this will be, recurring, if he's just, is it one and done? He's in and he's gone. We don't know. Don't know the name of the character. Don't know anything about it. But knowing how filthy that show can be and how good JDM is at playing an absolutely depraved character, not just Negan. I mean, if you should go back and watch him in The Watchmen, he's great in that as well. So I'm very, very excited to see what he's going to bring to the table. Very excited.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how is that going to affect, Negan will, because there's been some rumblings about Negan getting his own show and his own series and everything else. And so if he is taking, other shows, if he's, getting other gigs, what does that mean for future Walking Dead stuff? So but again, super exciting to see what he's going to do there, because that show is cray awesome.
I'm so excited. To me, that feels like a match made in heaven. I mean, that show, so good. You watched all of the most recent season. Obviously, you're up to date. Yes, just so good.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't watched The Boys, it's really great. I was late to the party on it, but I binged those first 2 seasons in time to be able to be up to date on season 3, and was watching as season 3 episodes were being released this year. And God, that show, it's depraved, it's crazy. I love it.
I know, it's amazing.
It's just so out there. Would you say on a scale of Preacher to The Boys, like, which is like, I mean, they're different in some ways, but they're very similar in others,
They're similar in like the gore content and just the just the ballsy way that they do stuff. I mean, it's but you're right, they're such different shows, yet there's a lot of stuff like they're different narratives, but the way they tell the narrative is very similar.
Yeah. I'm so excited. They're filming right now. They're on it. So they're That's filming awesome. That season 4 now. I'm so excited. I hope it gets an early release in 2023. That would be phantasmagorical. So excited about that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be very cool. Anything else we need to talk about other than I'm very excited to go on my vacation? I'm very sad to miss. While I'm gone, I'm going to miss. There's a film festival that's happening in Chicago. So listeners, if you're in the Chicago area, there's a Stephen King film festival happening at the Music Box, and they're gonna do The Shining. And I'm not gonna be
Friday
there.
night. It starts. It's the Stephen King festival. It starts Friday night. They're showing The Shining, and then right after The Shining, they're showing Dr. Sleep. So a chance to see both of the Shining stories that King wrote back to back. And then they're showing on Saturday, they're showing Creepshow. And then I think Creepshow 2 either right after it or on Sunday, and several other Stephen King movies as well. It's it's going to be really cool. I was super excited to go. And then, of course, Dee's like, I'm going to be out of town that weekend. So I'll be sad, but I will be eating popcorn, watching The Shining, being sad. So.
Yeah. And also, if you folks are interested, look and see if you have a Regal theater nearby you and there's a reason, look and see if that Regal theater that is closest to you is participating they are doing a special screening of Dawn of the Dead over that weekend for Halloween weekend. There are showings on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of Halloween weekend, and it's exclusively in Regal Cinemas. So take a look and see if there's one happening near you. There's going to be one here in Chicago. Steve and I are going to go to it on the Friday of Halloween weekend, and we're very excited about that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like October 28th and 29th. And it's only in select cities. But the thing that's just so, interesting is that it's going to be in 3D.
Yes. Very exciting.
So that's new. And also to go along with that, I believe this weekend, the same, the same program is re-releasing Jaws in 3D for the 50th anniversary of Jaws. So, and I think the shows are starting on Friday all the way to like next Tuesday. So again, if there's a Regal Cinema nearby, just go and check out their if you have the Regal app, or if you check out their website, you can see if any of these are being shown at your local one. And I already looked in Chicago. The Dawn of the Dead tickets are $19, so a couple bucks more than a regular movie ticket, but not crazy.
Yeah, and they will have that added element. It will be 3D, which I don't always love, but if it's for a movie I've seen before, which I have, then it'll just, I guess, enhance the experience.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else we need to discuss before we wrap it up for everybody here?
No, I think that pretty much does it as far as I'm concerned. And just again, we're halfway through Tales.
We are.
So
we are. And
we're gonna. That means we're.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say we're 3 weeks closer to the final trimester of the main show. Yay!
That is correct. Yay! And it'll even go quicker because we won't have a podcast next week, and then the week after that we're going to cover 2, and then we're back. So yay!
That's right.
All right. Well, that being said, we are going to go ahead and wrap this up, folks. We're so excited to continue talking to you. We look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks, as we said. So enjoy your holiday weekend that's coming up. If you're able to have a day off, that's fantastic. We look forward to talking to you soon. So until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed. You know, I really expect this podcast to be much more PC now that you've completed your training, because let's be honest, you know, it was getting a little blue there before.
Yeah, don't count on that, please. I need to have an outlet. If I can't harass people at work, clearly you're the person I need to harass.
Okay. Just, you know, remember we are recording.
So many things I could say.